Hi, this is Michele Brittany with Fanbase Press. I'm at San Diego Comic-Con International. It is Wednesday evening. It's preview night. And I am joined this evening with Kyle Higgins. Thank you so much for your time this evening.
Pleasure.
You are the writer of C.O.W.L.
And on good days, yeah.
On good days,
yeah.
Great. But you also have an upcoming series that I'm hoping that we can talk about a bit, and that is Hadrian's Wall. Could you tell us a little bit more about it?
Yeah, it's a book that is kind of our love letter to 70s and 80s sci-fi. The kind of like high concept pitch that I've always been using is that it's a murder mystery on a spaceship, right? Like, or it's a murder mystery on the Nostromo, more specifically. If you like the first Alien movie, and really, I don't know if you should read the book if you don't like the first Alien movie. No, kidding aside, it's a book that I guess I can just talk about the concept initially. Like, it's a murder mystery in this locked room, closed environment. It's a 9-person crew on Hadrian's Wall. They go out. It's a survey ship that explores different regions of space, looking for new materials for the company and terrorists in inner space to exploit. And on one of these trips, one of the crew members dies, and that's the cold open. They actually wake up in a spacesuit that's got a cracked visor, and the crack is splintering and it's shattering, and you're watching it happen from their point of view. And you don't know whether it was murder, you don't know whether it was operator error, you just don't know. Now, Antares wants a full kind of follow-up on the events. There's unrest between Earth and its largest colony on Theta, and because of that unrest, they want to dot all their I's and cross all their T's. And so they hire an investigator to go out to look into this case. Now, it should be a rubber stamp job, and the reason, which is the reason why the man put in charge of hiring the investigator goes to a friend of his, and that friend is Simon Moore, our main character. Simon Moore used to be a Seattle cop, a detective. Something happens. He's no longer a cop. He's on a pension from the city, and he pops a bottle of pills a week. He's the last choice for this type of job, but he's chosen because the victim was an old friend of his. They had a big falling out when the victim shot Simon 4 times and then married Simon's ex-wife. So the idea of Simon going out to the ship as a rubber stamp job to make $100,000 off of a guy he hated sounds pretty appealing. When he gets out there, it's obviously a little bit more complicated than he thought. So one of the things that makes it more complicated is the fact that Simon's ex-wife, Annabelle, is on the ship, and she's also a suspect, if this is even a murder. So that, set against the backdrop of an interstellar Cold War between Earth and that Theta colony, really kind of paints this book as, I've been describing it a lot as like this exploration of broken relationships, and that's really what kind of drew us to this world. And it started, like I said, as a love letter to 70s and 80s sci-fi, and then it morphed into something much more than that. But aesthetically, it's very reminiscent of an 80s comic book as an 80s sci-fi film, and all of that is thanks to Rod Reese, brilliant artist. This is his second book as an illustrator, as a painter. First was C.O.W.L, which we did previously to this, or prior to this, and it's something that we're all very excited for people to see, because if you liked C.O.W.L, this is light years beyond it. Rod just keeps getting better and better, and at this point, I don't want to let him go. So Hadrian's Wall 2 will be coming out. Let's announce it right now. No.
Oh, okay. Cool.
But yeah, so that's a little bit. It's my long-winded way of describing the book.
Well, I appreciate that. Obviously, you have some inspiration from the 70s and 80s, as you say, with Alien, with Aliens, Blade Runner, and so forth. Now, I know with C.O.W.L that was set in the 1960s, and now you have Hadrian's Wall, which seems to be set, at least rooted somewhat in 1985, I believe. Is that correct?
Well, it's actually set in 2085, but it's 2085 as envisioned in 1985.
Okay.
So there's an alternate there's like an alt history future going on here. In 1985, nukes dropped in Moscow and New York City, and as a result of that, both governments basically had a baby to save the marriage and decided to colonize space together. And now the story takes place 100 years after that. But again, aesthetically, it's like it's a world that's being envisioned as if we were making the book in 1985. So,
did you find any sort of challenges with doing that with this book?
Not for me, but for Rod. Yeah, Rod had a lot of challenges. Rod, yeah, we said it's the classic case of like, wouldn't it be cool if? And it's like, yeah, but you realize what that what that entails. He never complained about it or anything like that. But no, I think he was into it. I mean, he has such a great eye for period specific detail. And in this case, it's period specific detail that he's then imagining. He's imagining what computers in 2085 will look like, but then backtracking and saying as if they had been invented or built in by a 1985 designer. Yeah, I can't really. It's hard to describe without seeing it, but I think again,
you have a copy on you, right?
I have all of the pages on me at all times. I don't have physical copies, but
gotcha.
Yeah.
Well, it seems like you do gravitate towards period pieces with alternate history. What is the appeal of those kind of stories for you?
Well, yeah, I mean, this is my second creator-owned book, and both have been alt history sort of projects. Part of it is that they're both projects that I've written with Alec, and we're both big history, buffs, fans. He's a history kind of connoisseur. So they've been projects that we've both, our sensibilities have gravitated towards. We really like world building, and there are a lot of different ways to world build. There are, you can world build from the mundane, meaning a job that you haven't really seen explored before. The West Wing is a great example of a lot of world building in a very kind of focused niche, or Mad Men, right?
Yes.
It's potentially a very kind of mundane job or show, but the world building that takes place in that really makes it very unique and interesting. On the flip side of that, you have something like Saga, which is my favorite book on the stands, and the world building in that is huge. It's an entire universe. But then there are other ways to world build based on alt history as well, and so that's been the model that we've kind of gravitated towards here. That's not to say that it's our only horse. We have some other stuff coming up. I've actually got some other creator-owned books that will be announced pretty soon that may not involve alt history at all. So one of them does, actually. One more of them does, but the others don't.
All right. Now, I do have to ask you, the choice for Hadrian's Wall, I know a little English history, and that references a Roman wall that was built in the north of England.
Yep.
Is there a purpose for Hadrian's Wall that you can talk about?
Yeah, it's, the Hadrian's Wall was the furthest most point in the Roman Empire, as I understand it, anyway. When we were trying to come up with a name for both the ship and the book, I wanted to do something that was that conveyed this feeling of isolation that this ship was about, and or this feeling of isolation that really kind of permeated the story. I joked earlier that Spaceship Lonely just didn't sound great as a title, So finding something that had kind of a historical connotation was our natural kind of instinct. The ship is named Hadrian's Wall because it goes out to the furthest most reaches of space, and it's kind of a shitty assignment, like no one really enjoys going out to those places. So the ship was named that slightly tongue-in-cheek by some sort of history buff within the world. So.
Very cool. Now, I do want to talk a little bit more about your background in film, actually,
Sure.
Because you've done film directing and so forth. Can you tell me what that's like to make that bridging that gap from film over to comic books?
You know, to come to comics, it was pretty easy for me. I think there are two components to it. The first being the kind of like, well, how do you get the comics jobs? The second being creatively. And so the first, the how do you get the jobs, just something that kind of I fell into. I made one big short film, and it was a 30-minute superhero noir, which my book C.O.W.L is based on. The right people saw it. Joe Quesada at Marvel watched it, and shot me a message, and so I pitched to Marvel for like a year, and then landed a one-shot, Captain America one-shot, which brought in the creative side, which was tricky. Figuring out how to change over from screenwriting to comics writing. There are a lot of similarities, but there are a lot of differences. And it just took time and just a lot of reps, doing it over and over on different stories. It's funny because now, comics, I started getting hired more and more in the Batman office, and I blinked and all of a sudden 5 years had gone by and I hadn't shot anything. And I was writing a lot of comics, a lot of which I didn't own. They weren't my creations. So that's where C.O.W.L came from. I needed to get back into stuff that was mine. And now I'm taking that one step further and trying to get back onto the directing side. So I just shot a new film last year. I finished it in February, called The Shadow Hours, which is like it's a short film. It's like 18 minutes. And it's basically like a proof of concept for a feature that I'm working on right now as well. And it was a lot of fun to go back into that medium, you don't do something for a long enough time and you start to wonder, well, can I do it? Did I ever know how to do it in the first place, Am I just doing comics because I am too afraid to do that, And the answer is yes to all of those questions in one form or another. I mean, it's complicated when you have different things that you are passionate about, but for me, the creator-owned stuff, being, fortunate enough to work with Image, fulfills the same kind of, it scratches the same itch that the filmmaking does.
So what have you learned in comic books that you take back to that film? To your film
efficiency. Efficiency. There is no better medium. I say that like I've worked in a lot of mediums. I think that it's a fantastic medium for learning how to be an efficient storyteller. Cutting out shoe leather, getting in and out of scenes, that's all stuff that really good screenplays do, really good films do. Comics have to do it even better because it is such a finite amount of space. And I just think anytime you've written enough of anything, you're gonna become a better writer, And I have written a very small number of comics compared to a lot of people, but I've written enough that I look at the number of books that have come out sometimes, and I go, okay, that's. It wasn't by accident, and so I think most writers have an imposter syndrome. I very much do, and on those days where I just feel like I don't know what I'm doing at all, or I'm a total hack, sometimes it does help not to get caught up in well, I've written a bunch of books before, but at least to acknowledge that no, you've made something. That's really hard to do, and a lot of people aren't able to do that. And so for me, like, that is all very helpful and beneficial on the film side, because I think anytime you're able to complete something and get it out to the world only helps you grow as any sort of artist.
Yes.
And especially in a medium like filmmaking, where you could work for a long time on something that is never done and never sees the light of day. It can be very daunting to just start on something and have no idea if it's going to amount to anything, you know? So, yeah, I mean, just gonna keep pushing, I guess.
Well, that sounds great. You have spoken in, I think, an IGN interview last year where
It's
you...
very specific.
Yes,
What did I say?
And you said, I am paragraph 2. No. No, you mentioned that you were inspired by Terry Gilliam, who did Brazil, obviously, and also Jean-Pierre Junot, who directed City of Lost Children as well as Alien Resurrection. Have they inspired you in any way with Hadrian's Wall?
I don't know if I said... Did I say... I can't actually say his name. Jean-Pierre?
Jean-Pierre.
Jean-Pierre. I mean, I've seen both of those movies. I'm not sure if I don't remember saying that. Oh, shoot. Maybe I said it and I didn't... Alec might have said that. What was the first... Brazil. Yeah, Gilliam?
Brazil, yeah.
I mean, well, hold on. Let's talk about Alien Resurrection for a second.
Yeah, let's talk about that one.
I think it gets a bad rap. It's just not the Alien movie that, like, I wanted to see, and I think a lot of people wanted to see.
Yeah.
But it's interesting. And it's shot really well. Like, that dude has an eye.
He really does.
So yes, I have been inspired by those.
Well, he's very dark, but he really knows about tones and so forth in the visuals, and I figured that's probably had some sort of impact for you with Hadrian's Wall and the murder, the mystery, the psychological.
Yeah. The best part about working with someone like Rod is that his visuals are so complex, and they're so just dripping with mood that it creates a feedback loop. I write something, he comes back with an interpretation, and then I adjust to that, and we just keep kind of filtering and riffing off of each other. And, you know, the fact that he colored for like 10 years before he illustrated a book, you can tell. I mean, you look, his coloring is so good, his painting is so good on C.O.W.L, and on Hadrian's Wall it's even better. I mean, it's just... There are so many little things and nuances that he does to create those moods that feel unique and atmospheric that there's not a lot that I can bring to the table other than to tell him that it's fucking awesome and more, you know. No, I mean, we have a pretty healthy, we have a very healthy back and forth.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about palettes a lot sometimes, like I'll have a specific kind of palette in mind for a scene. The way we got to be even working together was because he was coloring Nightwing, and because of my film background and kind of cinematography background. Coloring is a huge thing for me in comics because it's the closest thing to a cinematographer and a production designer and a director kind of relationship where you're creating this world and this mood. And a lot of people, my theory is that when you open a comic book, it's not the art that you notice first. It's actually the color. And your eye notices the color, and then it starts to interpret the line work. So that's why a really good colorist can save an okay looking book, like an okay line artist. And the best thing about Rod is that he's so strong in both areas, but the coloring, his color work is just, it's second to none, you know. And you know, we're just gonna ride that horse as long and as far as it'll take us.
You must be very happy to be paired back up with Alec and Rod then with this project.
Yeah.
And do you have other projects in the works where the three of you will be grouped again?
Yeah, I mean, we talk a lot about we want to go back to C.O.W.L one day. We want to do more C.O.W.L. But we have some other stuff in mind. We don't really want to break up the band, you know. On the flip side, you know, I could see us all kind of doing different things at the same time and coming back together. And so it just, we're kind of taking it project by project at this point.
Very cool. And you mentioned that you had some other projects coming up. Anything that you can share with us today?
Nothing that hasn't already been announced, unfortunately.
Okay.
But I'm doing Hadrian's Wall, obviously. I'm doing Mighty Morphin Power Rangers at Boom. And then I have two more creator-owned books. And then I have another book that's a work for hire thing at a pretty cool publisher that I can't talk about yet.
Okay, that's fine.
But you'll hear more about it. You'll hear about it in the fall.
Okay, sounds great. And I guess, how many issues will Hadrian's Wall be?
It's 8.
It's going to be an 8 for now, and then hopefully more later, right?
We'll see. I've had a lot of people ask me about that. It is a murder mystery. Like, there is an end, you know. So we'll see. We'll see how it wraps up and what people think. But I think we're all very happy and proud of what we have so far. So
that's great.
Just excited for people to finally see it.
And remind me again, the film that you are working on, your short film.
Oh, it's called The Shadow Hours.
The Shadow Hours, and where could we see that? Is it out anywhere that we could see it?
It's not out anywhere. No. It's doing the festival circuit right now. So it just got in. It was a selection of Howley Shorts, which is a big LA shorts film festival. So it'll be there in August, sometime between August 12th and August 20th. We don't know the screening date yet. It'll be there, and then we'll probably start finding out and releasing where else it'll be playing in the fall.
Okay, sounds great. And where can people find you on social media?
Best place is Twitter, Kyle D. Higgins.
Okay, and do you have Facebook as well? Or
I do.
That much? Or?
Yeah, but I actually just went through and kind of whittled it really far down just to kind of core friends and family and things like that. But I have an author page that I've been trying to update more and more on Facebook. So
well,
it's a black and white picture of me from DC, so I'm sure it's the only one.
Okay, sounds great. Well, Kyle, thank you so much for your time this afternoon. I really appreciate that.